Okay, thank you everybody for coming today on a Friday afternoon to listen to Amy Peck speak. This is Amy Peck. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her and then share when I first heard Amy speak live. This is your chance for many of you probably to hear Amy Peck speak live. So Amy Peck is the Senior Director of Content at HTC Vive Studios, Enterprise Content, and works really closely with Enterprise in developing content solutions. She also founded EndeavorVR, a global XR consulting company, and sits on a lot of boards advising growth and use of XR. She's also the co-chair of the Enterprise Committee of the VR AR Association, which Lethbridge College is members of as well of that association. First time I heard Amy Peck speak was last year at the VR AR Global Summit in Vancouver. And she talked about, and if you actually are interested, her talk is online on YouTube, but she talked about enterprise collaboration and how these tools, VR and AR, can empower and allow enterprise to collaborate better, more efficiently, and less costly. And so these tools that we are going to have her talk about today, not only can they empower and allow collaboration, both the enterprise and small businesses, but what's really great is that the VR AR industry as a whole really is the epitome of collaboration. People like Amy Peck and Charlie Fink and others those who may know, we've run a VR book club for the last year. And every time we do, we read different books like History of the Future by Blake Harris. Every time we do these book clubs, the authors are more than willing to share some time with us and with the listeners. And so Amy Peck is definitely no exception to the fact that she's willing to collaborate and work and see this industry grow. And one of her personal missions with this technology is to see that it will improve those lives of the people around her and globally. And last night when we had a chance to talk, we talked about some really amazing ways that this tool, this technology can actually improve humankind and society. And so without any further ado, I'd like to give a big warm welcome to Amy Peck as she shares some information on innovation and entrepreneurship.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. I'm so happy to be here, and to those of you who are getting class credit for this and maybe here slightly under duress, I'm going to make this as fascinating as possible for you. You know who you are. No, it is true, actually. Our industry, because it's a nascent industry, we actually do kind of all know each other, and that's unusual in the tech business. And I actually refer to our little group and Mike is part of this, as the second grade soccer team, because we just all travel around in a pack around the ball, and we go to these conferences and we tell each other how amazing this technology is. But of late, I've been going out and speaking at sort of a broader swath of events, because it's not just this technology, it's really all technology that's upon us. And innovation, the sort of notion of digital transformation, you can't pick up a paper without hearing that term, but what does it mean, right? And in my mind, what it means is that we're just thinking of ways to do what we already do better or faster. But what if we innovate innovation? So that's what I thought I'd talk to you about today. But I am going to focus on the beginning part of my talk just on immersive technology, because that is my specialty. That is indeed my passion. But again, I want to share really what I think the big opportunity for all of us is. So I'll give you a little bit of data around AR and VR. I think all of us in the industry have been a little bit frustrated by how slow it's been. It's been a slow growth. But when you really look at all of these growth curves, VR kind of falls in the same trajectory, right, that all emerging tech, mobile, different kinds of media. So we're actually not that far behind. It's just because we're in it, it feels really slow. And then mobile AR, which to me is sort of the most rudimentary use case for augmented reality, right? Holding up our phones, it's great. We can, build our entire living room, right, with IKEA furniture. But that's just really the 1.0 of what this technology can do. So the immersive market, these numbers fluctuate wildly depending on who you talk to. This is hot off the press from a company I work very closely with, Super Data. They're a Nielsen company. And by 2022, it's estimated that the immersive market will be an $18 billion industry. So what does that mean for all of you? You're taking the right course. You're in the right spot. Can I canvas some of you, actually everybody, is there anybody here who really wants to make immersive technology their career? Wow, this is amazing. All right, so we're going to carve out that part of that 18 billion for all of you. All right, so mobile AR, again, we see good numbers because the smartest path to understanding how the consumer will use augmented reality is to go where they are. And where are they? They're on their mobile devices. So we're seeing a very steady upward trajectory. Not surprisingly, social AR. And again, face filters. How many of you have used Instagram face filters? There's like probably 4 or 5 hours that I'm never getting back from trying them on and recording them and then sending them to my children, which then of course horrifies them. But what's also very interesting about that number and about AR relative to filters and Facebook and Instagram and Spark AR is that we're creating a whole new generation of creators, right? In the same way that mobile phones made us all photographers, right? Everybody's actually a pretty good photographer now, right? Our imagery has been elevated dramatically. So that's kind of this kind of peer-to-peer notion, right? Where we're actually able to take tools and developers are making them simple for non-developers and non-programmers to actually build really cool digital experiences. And I put this number in here, 5G. 5G is an important component to all of this. And it's going to be a slow rollout, but 5G isn't just 2G to 3G, 3G to 4G, 4G to 5. It's exponentially greater than 4G and has security metrics and architecture that's really going to allow us to experience the digital landscape in this incredibly seamless way. Because in the future, we're not going to talk about being in AR versus VR. We are just going to seamlessly move in and out of the digital landscape. 5G is going to be a big piece of that. I love this slide. So where are we now? So if you look at these verticals, there is not a vertical there, and I haven't even put them all up there because I wanted it to be, some nice, beautiful symmetry. But immersive technology touches every single one of these industries, right? That's remarkable. And not just in one or two of the business lines, like across multiple business lines. So I put together a few use cases. Again, it was almost impossible to choose which ones to share, but this is just to give you some food for thought. So again, the interactive portion, who is going to be more focused on maybe enterprise solutions in their immersive tech career? And then gaming, and then kind of broad entertainment. All right, we've got some storytellers here, I like it. All right, so simulation and training, in my mind, is probably the #1 way that almost any company can leverage this technology. It's not inexpensive, right, which is why we don't see it as prevalent as it could be. It's expensive to build these experiences. That's actually part of why I joined HTC Vive, is that I want to build a marketplace where companies can go and there are out-of-the-box solutions so that they can see for themselves what incredible learning outcomes there are, right? We've heard, learning by doing. This is truly learning by doing, but without any of the danger and with truly measurable results. Collaboration, we talked about. Mike alluded to that. Education. We could spend an entire session on just kind of these two pieces alone. And the reason I put them together is I think that I would personally like to see in the future, I'd like to see education really as a collaborative effort. And not just necessarily with the people in your school or in your class, but on a global level, right? We can fundamentally change the way we experience other cultures by bringing children of all cultures together in a learning environment. Is it too big a vision? I don't think so. Visualization and planning, again, endless opportunities. City planning, you know, looking at how a high rise will impact the view of the, you know, if you live in Manhattan and you've paid for a water view, somebody puts a building in front of you, that is a legal nightmare you do not want to be involved in. So again, we can visualize all of that. Design, McLaren in the UK, I bring them up because what a beautiful car that is. They're actually designing cars in VR. Bell Helicopters, designing in VR and iterating. I think the Bell Helicopters said that they were iterating 10 times faster in virtual reality. I mean, think of the savings of that. I mean, that's an incredible number. All right, this is important. Emergency reflexive response. So has anyone done any training in VR? Just shout out what kind. Okay, anybody else? Great, excellent. Anybody else? So emergency reflexive response, have any of you been in a real emergency, like a fire, car accident, right? Did you have any idea how you'd react in that situation? Right? You don't know, right? You may think that you're the person that saves the day. You're the first one out the door or cowering in the corner, you freeze, right? You just don't know. Emergency reflexive response is a way to train, especially those on the front lines, first responders, those in very dangerous jobs on oil rigs, in factories here, right? You have a, what is it, $423 billion French fry factory that just opened. I bet that's got some equipment in it that's a little dangerous, right? The outcome is so good though, but let's train everybody better on those. So you can put them in this scenario over and over and over again till you build basically what is a muscle memory, right? So that you know how you will react in an emergency situation. Now I'm kind of adding a couple of different elements, right? So we have XR, this is AR, computer vision, can add AI to this. So remote technical assistance and field service, right? You have your experts. You don't want to be flying them all over the world. They can actually see through the glasses with outward facing cameras exactly what that field technician is seeing. They can put up schematics. They can share whatever they need to get that problem solved. That entire interaction can be recorded. You put an AI layer behind it. The next time anyone else is in front of that same scenario, the first line of defense can be that recording, right? So it's got this built-in efficacy loop. Real-time diagnostics. This is something companies here can use today, right? In factories, being able to put on a pair of AR glasses and it will show any anomalies on that floor, right? Much easier than just looking at something popping up on a screen and having to find the safest path to that issue. Digital healthcare, little tattoos. This is coming. So the first digital therapeutic was approved by the FDA in the US in last December. And essentially, it follows compliance, right? It makes sure that anyone who really has to have medication at a certain time every day, that they're taking their medication, right? But that's just the very, very beginning. we have the opportunity using digital therapeutics to monitor all of our bodily functions. And we can be the first line of defense. We can make the changes necessary before we have to go to a physician or worse, the hospital. Right? And this is where we're going. We're already wearing these very powerful monitors now. And it's going to move exponentially from here. And data visualization, this is something that I find really interesting. And those of you who are exploring a career, I don't think that anyone has really cracked data visualization yet. We're still at the stage where we're kind of bringing in this 2D construct of looking at data. But I think there's an opportunity to organically explore data, right? To work with data from the inside out. So in truth, the possibilities are truly endless. So we are limited only by our imagination. And the challenge I find with innovation is that I think we're limited by just trying to do the same thing a little bit faster. And what if we completely rethink how we do everything? Education is a perfect example of that. So let's get practical. If you're building a product, I'm not going to read all of these pieces, but I'll make these slides available. Think about building a platform. And before you write one line of code, so much work has to be done in identifying what problem you're trying to solve, which technology would be best to serve that end, who the stakeholders are, where you get budget, right? So now we've gone through all that process internally. We have budget, we've identified what we want to build a modular approach, right? It becomes endlessly expandable. And again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it does get kind of into the minutia, but it's the way that we need to think about how immersive technology can scale in a commercial environment, right? So you can start, you did your fire extinguisher training. So what they could do is then add other sort of building compliance training onto that. And you could have infinite number of modules, because once you've built that environment, once you have your characters, you reskin them, you re-rig them, right? And you just change out the curriculum. Becomes, he's got an idea. He's already carving out his piece of the pie. But this is exactly what I want to see, right? The wheels are turning. This is our opportunity. Then what's critical for companies and even for programmers? Digital asset library. Unity knows this. Unreal knows this. Companies have a hard time. Companies have a hard time with their digital assets now. Keywording them, finding them. They'll scan and rescan the same things over and over again. We need to find ways to simplify that process so you have a digital, sort of a centralized library, and each of the departments can pull from that library for their particular modules and their needs. Then I think there are 3 pillars that make a good AR/VR product. And I think that we've been so focused on this killer app, this notion it's a killer app, it's a killer. I don't think that's the case, right? It's not a killer app. Our lives are fundamentally changing, right? Technology's coming. It's all coming very quickly. And so we need to start thinking about things on a much sort of broader level. So here are the 3 pillars. Context. Who am I? What do I want to see? What is my intent? What have I given permissions for? Right? My location, everything around me, right? That is going to help dictate what content I get served. Because in very short order, there could be in any space, 200, 2,000, 200,000 digital experiences that have been left by various people. So we need to build that contextual layer so that the right people are seeing the right digital experiences. The next piece, utility. How am I going to use this? How is this going to make my life better? How am I going to do something faster? Right? This is a critical piece as well, and we miss it. Right? We think that we know our user, but we don't. Has to be useful for them. It has to be fun. Right? Even if it's about the utility, that UI UX, critical. Right? The engagement has to be fun. We know these digital worlds are coming. 1 million people tuned in live to watch Marshmallow in Fortnite. And that's the tip of the iceberg. We're going to be engaging with each other in a digital landscape all the time, seamlessly. But this is not the future. Dramatic pause. I told you Charlie and I fight over this word. So it is the convergence of all of these technologies, right? So, you know, your students, I mean, I urge you to look at all of the technologies, right? You can specialize in immersive technology, but understand the landscape of technology and how you can utilize all of them for the solutions of the future and the entertainment of the future. So here's my technology tree. I did build this all by myself. The thing that's interesting about this is it doesn't even come close to covering all of the technology that's coming down the pike. Right? So in addition to this, you can add, you know, another 2 trees at least. So it's important to, you don't have to be an expert in any of these, right? But understand what they are, what their basic functionality is, how they're being used today. So we are all now alchemists. What on earth does that mean? So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Does anyone have any idea what that black and white picture is? Like an ink block? You don't have to say anything now, but raise your hand if you think you know what it is. Okay, shout it out. It's a cow. So I put that up there because now that you've seen that it's a cow, anytime you see that, the only thing you can see is a cow. But that's only because I told you it was a cow. Now it's hardwired in your brain as the truth. So this is going to be a hard left turn, but bear with me. I will wrap this up in a little bow, I hope. So this actually comes from a talk given by a woman called Ellen Langer. She was the first female professor in the psych department at Harvard to be tenured. And she studies mindfulness, the science of mindfulness, and not in the way that we think about it with, you know, our apps, Calm and Headspace. We take our 10 minutes. Someone with very dulcet tones walks us through a meditation. No, what she talks about is rewiring the way we think and being present enough to challenge what we believe is a truth at any given moment. So 1 + 1 is, don't be afraid, you know what it is, shout it out. 2. All right, 1 + 1 in a binary system. I have 1 wad of gum, another wad of gum. I add them together. How many wads of gum do I have? 1. So right, 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2. Right, again, rudimentary example. But next time you see this image, try and fight the impulse to say that's a cow, because maybe it won't be the next time you see it. Right? So rewiring the way we think about things. Again, there is a point to all this. Keep this in mind. So why is this important? Because it is coming. There is really a tsunami of technology coming. Who watches Black Mirror? All right, that's a disaster. Because what are they doing? They're writing that dystopian future into your mind. I think I'm kidding. That's exactly the point. Like we are kind of standing on the beach and we're watching all this technology come at us. You know, we've got Elon Musk saying AI is going to eat the world. Quantum computing is going to be the ruin of us all. Is it? Do we have an opportunity right now to change that trajectory and to wrap our arms around this technology and write a new story? So IoT, no longer IoT. It's IoE. It's the Internet of Everything. All the machines are talking to each other. They're going to be talking to us. We're going to be talking to the machines. Soon enough, we're going to be machines. And if you believe in the singularity. Big data, no longer big data. Massive data. That's why somebody needs to crack data visualization in a virtual environment. Right? We have a whole new paradigm coming. And I listen to a lot of people, you know, say that we're doomed. Technology is going to destroy us all. And I just fundamentally don't believe in a dystopian future. But it doesn't mean we can sit around and think that it's all going to be okay. It's not. We need to be a part of writing this next story. And that's why I applaud all of you who are here working in technology, right? Because this is how we write that future, right? We learn the technology and we build a future that we want to live in. We are racing towards the future. So think bigger. We are all very, very consumed. I tell my kids, like when they're having an argument about, you know, whether or not one of them said the word the, which they will do for 20 minutes. Are you going to care about this in 10 minutes, in 10 days, in 10 weeks, in 10 months? No. Right? So start to filter out the noise. This is part of the mindfulness exercise. It's not just about meditating, right? It's about uncluttering your mind, right? It helps you be happier too, right? So it has benefits on a number of different levels. So innovation today is like throwing round dice with no numbers. I'm gonna let that wash over you for a minute. So how do we innovate, right? How do we rethink thinking? I believe we have to work backwards from the future. We have to start at the destination. So I did a talk in Australia this summer, and they got their money's worth out of me because I was on like 4 panels. I judged the startup competition. And on the last day, I was on a panel about what 2025 would look like in the contracts and procurement industry. You talk about a dry conference. But they were actually a lot of fun. And I was walking over at 8:30 in the morning, beautiful morning. The producer calls me and she says, "Oh, do you have slides for this morning?" And I said, "I thought it was a panel." She said, "Oh, no, but you're going to do a 10-minute presentation on 2025. And everybody else on the panel was from very specifically the contracts and procurement and legal industry. And I thought, no, I'm just going to talk. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? So I thought, all right, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to just build what my morning of 2025 is going to look like. And I did that. And first of all, it was pretty easy. It was easy because I do spend a lot of time thinking about this, about what future do I want to live in? So I came up with kind of a cool story about my, little robot who fixes me coffee and breakfast, and my, my AMW, my autonomous BMW, and my Mindy pod, which is my mindfulness pod, which helps me reset. And, I have my digital tattoo, and I check my bodily functions, and it kind of flowed. It was easier than I thought. And I thought, this was a really interesting exercise. That if you ask most people, what do they specifically want to be doing in 5 or 10 years? And this is not, building that pat answer for when you have a job interview. But like, what do you really want? And kind of look at this landscape of technology and how would you pull it in? Most people don't have an answer. And yet, ironically, I think that is the key to us telling that better futuristic story. Now I'm saying think smaller. Completely contradicting myself. What does that mean? How do you want to make an impact? Right? Build that version of you in 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 years. What world do you want your kids to inhabit? That gets everybody, right? People don't like to be selfish. They think, oh, I want this, this, and this. Even if you don't have kids, right? Your family, what do you want the future to look like for them, the people you care about? And this is how we make the impact, right? We need to collectively grasp what's coming, because let's not pretend that there aren't inherent dangers to all of this technology. We have a massive responsibility. We need to build standards. We need to ensure safety, right? You can't unsee something you see in VR. So you've all gotten spam. You imagine a horrifying spam VR experience. We have to make sure that doesn't happen. So we all need to get in the game. And that doesn't mean become a programmer. It doesn't mean anything other than choose what your contribution is and then do a little bit of work around it. Read up on technology. At the very least, build that kind of perfect vision. I don't like to say utopian. Someone shared the term protopian with me, and I like it. Right? What's your protopian, non-naive, non-Black Mirror version of the next 25 years for you? Right? Take the time to do it. It's actually kind of fun. And just keep learning. I'm saying that standing in a college, so I think I feel pretty safe that everybody's doing that here. So how do we get there from here? So we talked about Black Mirror. This is Iron Man, actually. Iron Man, Minority Report, The Matrix. It is not an accident that augmented reality looks like Iron Man. You know why? Somebody wrote it. Somebody made a film of it. We went in droves to go see it. And it's become part of the collective consciousness. And because we don't have a better idea, because we haven't taken the time to build what our version of the future looks like, right? And I think we would all agree that if we can all agree that that looks pretty good to us, I think we can all agree that if we built our own really good, powerful version of the future, that we have a lot of the same elements. And then we would be on a path to a future that we built, not what Hollywood built. Just throwing it out there. So the bigger exercise is, what is the future? What is the future of work, of play? We talked a little bit about what the future of education could be, right? I think that needs to be completely upended and changed so that we can serve all learners, all kids, all students, right? Education, entertainment, identity. That's going to be huge. We're going to have these digital twins, these digital replicas of ourselves, our avatars, walking around these digital environments. So what does that mean? What are the data controls around that? How are we going to control our data? That's another huge product besides the data visualization, is who's going to build the user interface for managing our own data. Like, we hate that Facebook and Google has it, but we don't recognize how much work it's going to take it back. But if somebody builds a beautiful interface where we own our data, we go to a physician and he says, all right, you need to go to the lab. You can turn on the permissions for those labs for that moment in time. As soon as they don't need it, you take it back. Right? Marketing. Let marketers pay us for our data. And brands. Actually, let's get rid of the marketers and advertisers. The brands come right to us. Right? As soon as they give us content we don't want, we shut off those permissions. But while it's on, guess what? They pay us. Guess how they pay us? Cryptocurrency. Right? Build these things. All right, value. What's our value when robots have taken our job? It's humanity, right? Our ability to create something from nothing, right? Like Minority Report, like my version of 2025. So that is the thing that we need to cultivate, right? That ability, that way of thinking. And it's been kind of beaten out of us since we were little, right? When was the last time you had a full-blown tantrum? Right? Can't do that. But when you were little, you could sing, you could dance, you could draw. Now we're like super awkward, right? Because it changes. We need to get back to that where we're fully in touch with that limitless creativity, because that is our limitless power. So what is the future of us? So if you're building a product or if you're inventing your future, build for how we will live tomorrow. And it's not just an expanded version of how we live today, right? We have a much bigger opportunity. So the best way to predict the future is to create it. I believe that's true. If we do that, no Black Mirror, everybody wins. And don't forget to think outside the cow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy, for that awesome presentation on innovation, technology, and really giving us some inspiration for where we can contribute and how we can contribute. We're going to turn the time over now to some question and answers that you may have. We also have a live stream that we are streaming to Norquest College in Edmonton, Alberta, and Bow Valley College in Calgary, Alberta. And if they can hear us, and if they have some questions, feel free also to type in the Zoom chat, the text chat, and we'll monitor that and relay that question to Amy. So anybody have any questions at all for Amy right now? Raise your hand or type in Zoom if you're at the remote location. All right, we've got one over here.
So in the industry, for example, with farming, people didn't know that plowing a field with a horse and a plow was broken until the tractor came out. As an industry leader, how is your company and you personally thinking about introducing XR technologies to people that don't even realize that it's something that's viable and better for them? Because a lot of the companies I notice now, their work is based on people coming to them. What's the outflow of that?
So I'm very happy you asked that, because I started my company EndeavorVR back in 2015, and been working with Fortune 500 companies who recognize the need for change and have the funds to be able to build out XR solutions for their business. But exactly to your point, I was seeing a lot of companies that kind of thought, well, if it ain't broke, right? We don't need to fix it. So I actually joined HTC specifically to build a marketplace so that we can license in and produce, because we have a studio and that's the team that I'm on. We can produce solutions that any company, big or small, can leverage right out of the box. And part of my personal mission is I go to these procurement, and you want dry materials handling, just more fun you can even imagine, like materials handling conferences. I do pharma conferences, I do ag tech conferences, because they're not coming to the XR conferences. And we're not going to get everybody, but it's really sort of an exercise in just exposure, right? And letting them know the technology's out there. We can put them in the headset. We have a saying, you always remember your first time in VR, and you do. And the most fun I have is when I get a room full of executives who have said, we're only giving you 30 minutes. And then 2 hours later, I'm pushing them out the door, and they're doing tilt brush, and they're yelling, and they're having a great old time, and they're all in suits and very serious. And it's the best thing in the world to put someone in VR for the first time, because you can't you can't really articulate what it's like. So my goal is to just get as many people in headsets as possible. And then they will tell us what they need, right? I can't help businesses because they know the nuances of the challenges that they have and things that are that could be improved. But almost every single time a business person goes into VR and sees 2 or 3 experiences, even if they're not related to their industry, they come out and they start rattling off ideas. So it's exposure. And when the headsets get smaller, like the Quest, I'm at HTC, but we all want the industry to excel, right? And so the Quest is a beautiful product, right? And it's a consumer product. And so the more consumers who are in VR and exposed, because consumers are the workforce and the workforce are consumers. We forget that. We often sort of talk to them as like separate entities, but they're not. So again, it's all part of the sadly very slow evolution, but we'll get there.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Derek from Norquest College. He said that you mentioned that the importance of standards in XR, and he wanted to know who is developing and building those standards today.
So there's actually a number of organizations. I actually spoke at a conference back in April, and it's 3GPP, so it's the standards body for the telcos. And so now they're on to 5G, and so they're looking at standards for 5G. There's another group, and I can't quite remember the name. HTC is a member, Google's a member, Amazon's a member, and I want to say it's GXR for maybe Global XR, but I'll have to double check and I'll get back to you on that. So they're looking at the standards for content, right, and putting some privacy and security metrics and architecture around behaviors in virtual environments. And again, for every industry, there are different standards bodies, and sometimes there are multiple. IEEE is also very active in looking at standards for all of these things, also from the architecture standpoint. So it's slow going, and the thing is too, we don't necessarily know what standards we're building because people don't have enough experience in these virtual environments. So we're trying to kind of build some structure around it, and then the more experience we have of consumers working with these technologies, the better we can assess what kind of standards we need.
All right, we have one more question from Bo Valley, and then we'll give some more time to our local audience here. So Bo Valley asked, you made a comment, Amy, about blowing up education. They were wondering if you could tell them a little bit more about what that looks like to you.
I don't want to use that term. I think I said upending, which
Okay,
maybe that's not even a good one. Turning it upside down. Yes, so yeah, I'm glad you asked that too, because there are so many educators that I speak to that are very passionate about this as well. So in the current construct, especially in middle school, because we're not really talking about putting kids in elementary school yet in headsets because we don't understand what the safety ramifications are. But middle and high school, there's math phobias, right? And there are, at that time, kids are labeled and they have a very specific perception of what they can and can't learn, but we're teaching them in this very linear construct, right? And that serves certain children. And I learned this from personal experience because I have one child who sailed through school. Everything was just, sunshine and roses, because he's a linear learner. And he can regurgitate anything that anyone has said to him, right? So he does well on tests. Then I have my younger child, who is what I call a volumetric learner. And I'll give you an example. When he first started playing GTA, Grand Theft Auto, he did not get into the car and start playing the game. He got in the car and he drove to the end of the rendering because he wanted to see what would happen. And so that type of thinking and behavior meant I was getting calls on a fairly regular basis from the principal's office. But he has a special type of intelligence, right? It's not linear, but that kid in CSGO followed valuable skins till they were reskinned. They fell into the hands of someone who didn't know the value of it. Then he got it for a song. He then found a site where he could bet CSGO skins on a roulette table. He studied the best roulette player in the world, some doubling mechanic. They awarded you in Bitcoin. He had about 2,000 Bitcoin 5 years ago. So again, you're thinking, this is worse than the principal's office, potentially. But that takes a special kind of intelligence to put all of those dots together. And that's why I call it volumetric thinking. It's not an out-of-the-box thinking. It's connecting dots that other people don't make. And we need to connect those dots within all the technology. So that's one way, I think, for education. And I'd like to see virtual environments where you have baseline curriculum, but it's a discovery mechanism. So children can discover a piece of curriculum that they like, and there's infinite drill downs in that subject. But it doesn't have to be for everyone, right? This is a big vision, but we talked about that we're going to do this, right? We're already on it, right? Because there's these, the faculty members are really, really passionate, but this is a big vision. So again, we all need to get in the game and change this for our kids.
Great, thank you. Pierce has a question.
So you've been talking about like the technology being updated rather impressively. So do you have any, what would it be called? What do you think about the concept of VR or the full body concept, not full body, but full dive concept?
So you mean fully immersed, where you are in like a haptic suit in a full virtual environment?
I think I'm thinking a little bit ahead of that, where your mind is actually taken into virtual
We're sort of
reality.
post-singularity now.
Yes.
Removing our consciousness. Again, I think that's part of the story, whether or not we want to tell. There's a philosophical argument there, right? Is that what we really want? I had somebody ask me, well, what happens if your virtual life is so much better than your real life that you never come out of virtual reality? And I kind of said, well, as long as you can, survive and live in whatever that construct is in terms of your well-being and so forth, what difference does it make? Because we're really very judgmental about what we think is right and wrong, right? We hate the fact that we're in our phones all the time and that it's causing social disorders. But you could also look at it and say, socially, we're connected to so many more people than we ever could be, right? I'm in touch with people that I went to school with who I would have lost contact with many, many, many years ago. And again, they're all living their, fabulous Facebook lives, right? But we could do that in a virtual environment. Like our Facebook life could be real. We could just edit out the stuff we don't like. But again, we kind of have to make up the story and maybe get out of the way of judging what we think is going to be the right social more and the right social norm, because we know what our responsibility is from a moral perspective, right? And I think that should be the core. And let's be a little more expansive about what that can look like. Maybe teleporting our consciousness into another realm will be amazing. But it's terrifying to think of that, right? Because we have no concept of that. We have no connection to that. But we can have a connection to all of this if we spend some time kind of imagining what these worlds would look like. And wait, all right, so if I were going to do that, all terror aside, what would that look like? And maybe we come up with a plausible, exciting reason to do so. And I can't answer whether that's right or wrong for anybody. I think that's very personal. But again, that's why I'm sort of urging people to take some time and think about what the possibilities are with all of this technology. I hope that answered your question.
All right, we got a question over here from Ethan. I'm glad to see some of my students asking you questions.
You mentioned earlier how robotics coming into things and taking our jobs couldn't destabilize what shenanigans anyway. My question is, to what extent do you agree or disagree with the idea that with machines and robotics specifically becoming more advanced, it's now on more importantly, now a human role in the world, I guess, is not necessarily to do the thing as much as it is to think of and create the thing, and then the droids will do the footwork.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it as like, God, I have like so many minions now. No, I mean, in seriousness, you know, there are going to be some serious economic ramifications because there will be millions and millions of people displaced. But again, today we have an opportunity to find ways, maybe using VR, right, to train people on with new skills. And again, someone has to run the robots. Like there are new industries that are going to come from technology. And, you know, I met someone from Airbus, and, you know, as usual, we always ask what do you do? He says, yeah, I'm working on the space station. I thought, okay, and that's sort of all in a day's work. He's working on the space station. But, you know, we can all kind of have those aspirations and those dreams, and we can live in that realm. The challenge we have now is how do we get from here to there? This middle ground is revolution. It's evolution, but it's revolution. And we have to do our best to make sure that as many people as possible, because not everyone wants to learn a new craft. Not any, you know, everyone wants to live in this new age that's upon us. But the fact is, it's upon us. So I think it's our responsibility to find ways for their humanity and their other talents, right, to shine and to make money. And this is where I didn't get into it, but I believe there's going to be a parallel economy that comes out with blockchain and cryptocurrency, and not the way governments and banks want to do it, right? And just kind of take it into the fold and then, you know, build it on top of the existing economy, right? That's not going to work. There's a peer-to-peer economy that's emerging where we are going to decide between one another what the value of any object or service is. And this is going to kind of expand into digital goods as well. I mean, we've seen it. Why do you think Fortnite is making billions of dollars? They're buying digital goods. They're meaningless in the real world, supposedly, but they're meaningful to the buyer who has a parent like me who keeps paying for it until we shut that down. But you see what I'm saying, right? So let's let this new economy thrive.
All right, we've got much more questions here. Let's go over here to this side.
Hi, you mentioned before that one of the biggest opportunities right now with VR is training, right? So I'm wondering how you see the low penetration rates of these VR headsets, affecting the deployment and adoption of this technology. I understand that some companies like Airbus, McLaren, they're training their employees, right? But what about on the bottom side of the pyramid, like the SMEs, like the small, medium enterprises? And the reason why I'm asking this is because we're a startup from Calgary and we're creating VR training modules for high turnover businesses. And when we did the discovery and the validation process, we found that that's actually one of the biggest risks, for the adoption of that technology. So I just wanted to get your feedback.
I mean, the headset themselves. Yeah, and it is a big problem, unfortunately. And the tetherless devices like the Quest, and we have Focus Plus, and we've just released also a beautiful piece of hardware called the Cosmos. They're still heavy, right? So we're still going to be battling that. We will eventually get to the point where we have hybrid AR, VR glasses where they're AR most of the time, right? So we put them on, and you'll be able to, anything that you're accessing on your mobile device will be projected in your field of view. Very hard technology. It's why Magic Leap, has taken in 2.4 billion. And then we'll be able to put a little hood on and we'll be in virtual reality. But again, that form factor has to change. We at HTC have also released, an MDM system, which is mobile device management. so that if you do have these Focus Plus devices in the field, they're much easier to put on and off, and then they can be controlled remotely through a back-end system. So you can wipe them, you can update content, and it only requires connectivity for a short time to do firmware and software updates. But again, it's still a cycle, and you're exactly right. Like, some people just don't want to put those headsets on.
Great. Do you have a question? All right. Casper has a question.
Hi. So my question was, you mentioned massive data and the Internet of Everything, and how even you have like a device on your wrist right now that tracks things like, I think the Apple Watch does like heart rate and stuff. With all of that data floating around in security, do you have any thoughts or projections on how that kind of stuff impacts us in the future, and like how we can kind of control that? Because kind of even right now, there's tons of stuff about us on the internet and companies or whatever that we don't even know about. Like, I'm sure everyone here has probably signed some agreement for Facebook or some other site that you haven't read all of it, right? And I'm wondering about the future of like kind of controlling your data and security and all of that.
Yeah, so I think it's sort of twofold. We are going to have this kind of avatar who's going to be our sort of digital representative in the digital landscape, and I envision that avatar living on the blockchain, right? And then we have our public persona that sort of lives on that digital avatar, which is, our fabulous Facebook Live, our Instagram, all our social media feeds. I even think there are going to be other social media feeds that kind of come out of these virtual environments. And then the other side, we have our private data. And again, this is going to be whoever builds this interface, which I think is really important, so that we actually are able to aggregate our data, and then we put the controls on it. So we become our own Google and Facebook. It's going to be a big strong arm contest for us to take our data back. But it is possible, and it is possible, especially working with blockchain and being able to put these mechanisms in place to provide security, where we have the keys and we only give out the access privacy keys to those who need it, and they're on a time lock, and they end after a certain period of time. It also kind of relieves corporations of the responsibility of having to safeguard our data, right? And then we're able to control it. It's on distributed ledger. We haven't proven that blockchain is that secure, but that's where I see all of this going.
Great. Here you go, James.
Hi. So I guess one of the points for VR, and I work in that industry as well and teach at a university. I think ultimately, when you look at where XR is going to go, or you're looking at a kind of ideal system where everything's pervasive, everything's ubiquitous, the devices really get in the way, obviously, in terms of that experience, and you want things just to flow in the way that we lived our lives, thousands of years ago. Maybe not then, but that sort of experience. And so if you take it to its logical extreme, I mean, your competition really is Google. If you look at the Toronto Quayside development there of creating a kind of a data ripping system that constantly produces a feedback loop in which it's so pervasive, even the idea of glasses, you won't need those anymore because your autonomous vehicle is giving you suggestions as to where to go, or making decisions for you. And that becomes our kind of, where we go for our point of stasis, where we're not making decisions anymore, which is kind of our natural state that we prefer to be in there. So I guess it's a little bit of a pushback to the idea there that, we can be anything we want, because I also work in the industry that controls all your data, right? And we create a loop, and we're being sold to a company that's so big that they own everything. So your data goes into that, and they know exactly what you do, and then they know how to respond to that, and you don't even know that you're part of that system. So how does HTC see itself as being different from that?
Well, I want to be clear too that I'm not speaking on behalf of HTC. I joined HTC because I believe in their vision to make, VR modules available to all companies and make it easy for them to find best-in-class solutions. So I do want to separate church and state. My opinions are my own. So yeah, I think that's a big issue. And how do we get from the Google and the Amazons and the Facebook having all this data about us? And it's not going to be like, oh, we wipe the slate clean and we get to take it all back. The data that's out there, it's out there. But where I think we have an opportunity is to start using blockchain and the hash system to be able to start building our own database. And if we have a mechanism to be able to control who gets that data, or if we're releasing the data where we have the ability to actually get paid for that data, right, because it is valuable, then, you know, again, it's not going to be an either or. And sadly, I think it's a little late for us.
Yeah.
It's going to be out there.
And I think that's a great idea. I mean, you're talking about blockchain, and I'm glad you do. And we have a lot of blockchain development going on in this region. But it's kind of evokes this image of a person with a huge keychain and 1,050 keys that they have to control. So in a way, Google has won because you're now the keeper of your own information, which is great, but you have to constantly monitor it, and people don't like doing that. And so in a way, maybe they'll just give up.
It's torture, and that's why I say, you know, we like to whine about everyone having our data, but we have no idea how hard it's going to be for us to manage it. We are going to have to be, you know, like we're going to say, oh my God, I forgot to, you know, turn on the permissions for this appointment, and now, you know, it's taking too long, or what, you know, whatever it happens to be. But it's going to be down to the will of that particular person and whether or not they want to, you know, kind of they want to monetize their data. If they want to monetize their data, they're going to have to control their data, and that's going to require a big amount of effort. But the good news is the robot will have their jobs, they'll have loads of time to do it.
All right. Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, we got Reed, and then Rick, and then Jade.
My question is, so there's a few schools of thought when developing for these technologies. Some people want to develop things to help make an impact on people, and some people simply want to make money. And I guess my question is, with I guess VR and AR being mass adopted, how could you mitigate some of the issues that have emerged from cell phones, as an example, from people transitioning to VR and AR in a way that we're not continually isolating ourselves physically, but connecting ourselves digitally?
Yeah, I think that that's a really interesting point. It's another one that sort of touches on this kind of philosophical notion of sort of the next generation of sort of social mores and social behaviors. I actually find being in virtual reality with other people very social. And something that's very interesting, I think Facebook actually did a study on, you know, in their Facebook spaces, and they have very cartoony avatars that sort of vaguely resemble their people. But like I talk with my hands and I have a particular cadence to my voice that people who have never met each other in real life, who then have interacted as their avatars in a virtual environment, if their avatars are being tracked, and so you can see their facial expressions and their physicality, they know each other. Right, so that's one piece of it. And then what was the other piece of your question, where you wanted to know the responsibility versus the making money piece?
Just how we would transition, I guess, from cell phones to AR and VR, and just kind of mitigate the issues that have emerged out of cell phones. How would we prevent that from
doing like this and walking into dreams?
Yeah, you can imagine a future where maybe everyone does have a headset on their face, or, you know, is in their own space but never physically together.
Well, it'll be glasses, I think, in the short term. So there's sort of, I think, layers of screens. So we have, this is our screen now. And then the next evolution will be something like a Magic Leap or a HoloLens that looks more, I don't know if you've seen in the lab, in Mike's lab, they've got the Bose AR glasses, which are my favorites. But they'll look like those. They're basically going to be Magic Wayfarers. So it's not even that much of a transition. But what is going to change is this sort of app culture, because we're going to start to use computer vision and natural language processing and gesture to gauge intent. So where am I looking? You know, what am I saying? You know, what are my hands saying? You know, I want to go that way. So we're going to be interacting with the technology. We're trying to build it in a way that it feels more natural. And the irony is that it's much higher tech, but we're going to make it seem more humanistic. Now, we're going to go through that period where we all look a little bit crazy, where we're kind of like doing things in front of our glasses, and until everybody has them, they're gonna be like, what are you doing? Because I can take calls on my Bose headset, I mean, my Bose glasses now, and they just look like Wayfarers. and I'm talking and I'm walking down the street and doing this, and you can't, there's nothing in my ears. So, you know, we'll have that, we'll go through that kind of awkward phase. And then the next evolution will probably be the headset with the kind of VR dome. And then who knows from there? And again, you build it.
We're just going to end with Rick and Jade's question. And if you do have more questions that we weren't able to get to, I'm sure that Amy will be more than willing to respond to them through email. She has her email
My
address
email's
up there. Or through Twitter. But just in the interest of time, because we do have some fruit and veggies for a little casual kind of networking after, we're going to just wrap it up with Rick and Jade.
Hi. Okay, I'm a little too loud. I was just wondering if you draw any comfort from the fact that whenever there's been a big technological change, like the printing press, the cotton gin, and so on, that there has been a pushback against these technologies and saying that they're going to wreck the world, and they've perpetually been wrong in that. It's only been improving the world. So.
No, I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yay, somebody positive. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. No, I agree with you. But I do, I mean, there are much broader dangers, I think, now with because it's a multitude of technology kind of coming all at once, and each technology has its own kind of inherent dangers if misused. And so again, that's, you know, part of my message is, you know, we need to kind of get in front of that problem before it becomes dangerous.
All right, last question for the day. Make it a good one.
Pressure's on. So today we've talked a lot about where we want to see the tech going, and like just being on the verge of the tsunami. But for those of us in this program, we have a year to learn all this stuff. We're kind of tossed into the ocean and be like, change the world. What's some of your advice for us to expedite our learning, but also to help us manage our expectations of what we can accomplish?
I think we are, and this sounds so pat, but I actually truly believe it. Like, we really are truly limited by, you know, our own imagination, right? And what we think is realistic. But having said that, and understanding that, you know, you're in the middle of a curriculum, which, by the way, I really applaud Lethbridge for building this program out. I'm so excited to see that we've got these next generation of creators and programmers in immersive technology. And, you know, I don't think anyone can really answer that for you. I think that what's great about this tech is the more you learn, the more this kind of exponential world opens up for you. And then you can kind of look and see what you gravitate towards. I sadly made my little volumetric thinker, and I put him into a VR program thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to change his life. He's going to love it. And he came out, he's like, well, at least I know I don't want to be a VR programmer. So, you know, that wasn't the ideal outcome, but, you know, he learned something from that, but he did learn from somebody else in the program about bots. So now he's getting, you know, his Instagram feed shot down every day because he's using bots to get followers. So, you know, I guess that's a win. But just, you know, do what, you know, just follow your, you know, whatever your trajectory you feel you want to go on, and then don't be afraid to take a left turn if the will takes you.
All right. I want to give a big thank you to Amy Peck. And can we give all a big round of applause?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy, for taking time and coming here from a less snowy part of the world where you live in San Francisco to share some great insights about innovation and technology, and give us all something, especially myself, something to think about. I also want to thank the Center for Applied Research, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship, who helped make the funding possible through RINSA to bring Amy Peck here to share these great insights. There was one question from the different sites about the recording that we did. And we'll be able to share this with you guys through an email later on. So if those who are not able to attend at Norquest or Bow Valley College, we'll share the recording with you. Again, thank everybody for coming today. I know on a Friday afternoon it's tough, but I think the message and the content was well worth it. Again, thanks again, Amy, for taking the time. We will have some fruits and veggies, and feel free to kind of mingle, talk more, visualize the future, as Amy kind of said, kind of paint that perfect protopian world, and then talk about these ideas here. So thank you again, everyone.
Great, thank you.